Welcome back to Ultra Uncovered. I'm Corinne Chalvoy, joined by Russell Ditzworth. And today we are back to one of our core episodes talking about a classic ultra that exists out in the trail running world. Today we're talking about the San Juan Solstice 50 miler, a classic heading down to the San Juan Mountains of Colorado. And this race takes place in Lake City, Colorado. It's known for its huge climbs, high altitude, technical terrain, and some of the most beautiful mountain running anywhere in the US. It is a race that rewards experience, patience, and mountain savvy, maybe more than pure speed. We'll have some discussion around that with our guest. And joining us today is someone who knows a lot about this course, maybe knows it as well as anyone. It's multi-time San Juan Solstice champion, Mr. Ryan Sullivan. Ryan, thanks for joining us.
Hey, happy to be here as the number one San Juan Solstice 50 fan.
Yes, rocking the hat, the finisher hat. We'll get into all that. So, as is typical on our episodes, we are going to start with the first half of the podcast talking about the course itself, giving you, the listener, some insight into how to prepare. And hopefully, if you're looking at putting this on your ultra running calendar, you'll get some inspiration and some really good intel into what to expect out there. And then, second half, we will talk about Ryan's own personal experiences, how he prepared, what he has learned over the years running the race multiple times, and why he keeps coming back as the self-proclaimed number one fan of San Juan. Before we get into the course itself, we've got a little bit of an overview and some history. Russell, you want to get into that?
Yeah, I can always appreciate a race that doesn't go out and create separate distances to try to get a bigger event. It's always been a 50 miler. It's a 50 miler every year, and I love that. And so I'm going to take us back to 1995 when a certain Chip and Kathy Lee decided to create the Lake City 50. So a 50-mile event in and around the mountains of Lake City, Colorado. So for the first 7 years of this event, I'll say they really struggled. They struggled with the snow. The very first running of the event, they ran a snow course and times were in the 9-hour range. So I'm pretty sure they did not run 50 miles out there that year. And they had a hard time finding a good spot on the calendar for this event. So after the first 7 years of the event, they did donate the event to the community of Lake City. And the community of Lake City renamed the event the San Juan Solstice 50-mile benefit run. This is really when the event took off because it's an event that benefits the EMTs in the area. Current day, they also benefit scholarship funding for the local high school, as well as they have a grant system for all sorts of other public services in Lake City. So I think it was funny. I found the website said in that first 7 years, the Lake City community had no time for these ultra runners or volunteering for their race. So as they took it on themselves and they had a benefit there, and then also finding a time in the year that made a lot of sense. They centered it around the summer solstice, which is always in late June of every year. And so the San Juan Solstice 50 was born. So there's been 30 editions of this thing, and it's pretty amazing the number of runners that have come out to the mountains and decided to take this on. It may be Matt Carpenter's first race over marathon distance. He ran this in the late 90s ahead of his famed Leadville attempts. And then just some of the other names that are on there. But, in addition to our guest, who is a 2-time winner and a low 8-hour finisher, but you've got folks like Dakota Jones that have been a finisher, Jason Schlarb, Devin Olson, and then on the women's side, Hannah Allgood, Courtney DeWalter, Claire Gallagher. All of these people have come out to the Lake City 50 to the San Juan Solstice 50-mile race. I guess just one other thing that I really want to feature here is that one of the originators of the race, along with Chip and Kathy Lee, was Gary Curry. And he was kind of a famed ultra runner in those years, always running the Leadville 100. He has over 20 finishes at both the Leadville 100 and the Angeles Crest, as well as a 3-time Hard Rock finisher. Unfortunately, he passed in 2014 with over 90 results on his ultra sign up, but it was a repeat of those races every year. It was always Angeles Crest, Leadville, Hard Rock if he could get in. So, that's one thing I'm really interested to hear from Ryan. Some folks I'm thinking of like a Jimmy Elam. He kind of famously only wants to do a race once, nail it, and then move on to another one. You've got a good list on your ultra sign up, and you've repeated some as well. But like, what is it about San Juan Solstice that like either has you coming back, or are there certain races that you kind of always want to come back to?
Speaking of Jimmy Elam, he won this race 2 years ago.
Nice.
Yep.
So I guess he's never coming back.
No, I don't think so. He actually did say he would run that one again. I like to go because it's kind of been a thing that all my kind of the local running community in Western Colorado, we always get a good contingent of people that want to do it. So it ends up just being a really fun weekend to camp. We camped down at Carson. Oh, what's the name? Williams Creek, which is the first crude aid station around mile 16. And it's just a hard race, and it'll get you ready for if you have like longer mountain goals, anything like that. It's a pretty good early season. It's a good way to get up high pretty early, and kind of an excuse to get down to the San Juans as soon as it opens up with snow.
So you've both crewed and raced this. I'm taking it then?
Oh yeah, a lot. Yep. The years I haven't raced it, I've crewed it and hung out for the whole weekend.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, so taking it back to my story about Gary Curry, he is the namesake for the scholarship program that's there now. And throughout this time that the run has been a benefit, they've donated before they became a 501c3, they donated close to $250,000 between 2002 and 2021. And since then, they've actually increased that. They've donated over $70,000 to Hinsdale County EMS and other public service organizations in Lake City. I remember it just always like hearing about like, oh yeah, you got to sign up for the lottery in time. And they do a full lottery, a 300-person lottery, and they have a 285-person wait list currently. So I don't know historically how fast they make it through that wait list, but they definitely talk about on the website, like, hey, you got to check in at these specific times or else you're out and we're picking somebody off the wait list. So I don't know if you have any commentary on that, Ryan, of like how quickly people make it through the wait list or what you can expect if you're in there on that side.
I do have a little bit of insight into this. So when I moved to Grand Junction in 2017, 2018, everyone always talked about this race. There's a guy named Kirk Apt who is like a 26-time Hard Rock finisher who lives in Fruta, and he loves San Juan Solstice, and he's still out there like doing like sweeps and stuff like that. He always said everyone who's ever shown up the night before the race, if you're on the wait list, you can show up the night before the race, and whoever doesn't check in, your spot will go. Everyone who's shown up the night before has gotten a spot. Mm-hmm. This race has grown in popularity, particularly in the last 3 years, to the point where I know somebody who was on the wait list maybe 20th the night before the race and showed up the night before, and there were people on the wait list ahead of him waiting, and he did not get a spot. So I think that was the first instance of that ever happening. So the race has grown in popularity. I don't know how deep the wait list usually goes, but they're not clearing it completely anymore just because it's grown in size so much. I think if you're in that top 50 to 80 range on the wait list, there's enough movement in the early summer where you'll pretty much get in. It's definitely gotten probably twice as hard to get into that race over the last few years alone.
Yeah. And I think we'll talk about, I know it historically as something that, even in talking with a lot of the old timers like a Betsy Kalmeyer or, people that would run Hard Rock all the time, that this was for it. And it sounds like you would echo that in that it really helps get you ready for longer mountainous ultras. It's also a counterclockwise loop and just one giant loop. So I think a lot of people love probably that aspect of it. And we'll talk more about what that looks like, from the race itself. But just to set the stage before we go into the details, Lake City is kind of in the middle of nowhere. I mean, there's not really any good way to get to it. And it's essentially like due east of Ouray, but over a mountain pass. And so it doesn't really matter what direction you're coming from. It's going to take a number of hours to get there. And there's only like 400 people that live in this city, or in the town. So it's a very, very remote. And like you said, I think a lot of people camp. I remember, they set up like camp areas, and there's just not a ton of infrastructure around it, which is maybe one reason why if you make your way out there, you have a good chance of maybe still getting in.
Yeah, and the race director, Jerry, he arranges something with the city, and they open up a giant town park, and
Yeah.
everyone can camp there, which is very close to the start finish on race weekend. And there's all kinds of like, weekend long, like little cabin rentals and stuff, because I think summer tourism is probably Lake City's main source of revenue.
Totally.
So there are options, just it is in the middle of nowhere. It's not like you could stay anywhere else and have a reasonable drive in the morning.
Yeah, exactly. So around 50 miles. I've seen some Stravas that are just under 50 miles. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Ryan. Do you think it's a true 50?
Yeah, I looked back. Forgot. I didn't. I should have looked back on my Stravas. I'm pretty sure it's like 48.9 or
I said 49.
49.1 or something like that. It's a 50 miler. Don't worry.
But 12,000 feet of climbing, give or take. And you spend a lot of time at elevation, which we will discuss in depth here. You go over 13,000 feet near Handies at one point. That's the high point. And poles are allowed. You're allowed pacers starting at mile 40. But lots of just generally steep climbs, technical descents, very rocky, very alpine tundra, and a lot of things you would expect in a high mountain ultra, like rapid weather changes and things like that. So you've run a lot of 50 milers, Ryan. So first question out of the gate here, what makes it different than other 50 milers that you've run?
I'd say it's probably a 50 miler that runs like 100K, just with the terrain and the altitude particularly. Like a really fast time being, like 8.5 hours. That's more akin to 100K with that. I mean, like Gorge Waterfalls has a similar amount of total, although at sea level and much faster trails, and it takes about the same amount of time as this. So it's a pretty heavy 50 miler compared to a lot of other options you could do, where if you were, a 9-hour San Juan Solstice might translate to like a 6 or 7 hour race on other 50-mile courses, depending on, because of the altitude and the terrain mostly.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And talking about those times, that's a great race for comparison, because I think Adam Peterman just broke 8 hours last year at Gorge Waterfalls. And you had mentioned to us, and we saw online as well, that there have only been 2 people to break 8 hours at San Juan Solstice. So it does seem like a very fair comparison, just to like another trail 100K, maybe not necessarily like a flatter one, but like another trail one that definitely still has some climbing. So maybe this is our bid to put San Juan Solstice back on the Western States qualifier list.
Yeah, could be. There was a lot of talk, maybe not a lot of talk. It's just because I listened to Finn's podcast, Single Track, and they were talking about like world's team selection courses. There was some debate whether Gorge Waterfalls was an appropriate one, given that it didn't really sync up with the terrain for worlds. I mean, if San Juan Solstice weren't at such a crazy altitude, it would be a great world mountain running champs course. I do think that the altitude would give a very unfair advantage to people who live in like California or East Coast or anything like that. You'd have to spend a lot of time very early season at altitude to be on a level playing field with people who live out west at higher altitude.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into that. The course records on the men's side, it's currently Dakota Jones 7:35:03, run in 2013. And then Courtney Walter running 9:11 for the women in 2021. So those are your fastest times. But let's start at the beginning here. Tell us a little bit about I know you start in the middle of not in the middle of the night, but you start in the dark.
Feels like the middle of the night.
What time is the start?
It's like 5 a.m. It's like right before sunrise. It's
Yeah,
not that
yeah,
bad.
but it is I remembered it being dark when I was out there spectating, and it's like it sounds like you probably don't start with a headlamp, right?
You do because
You do?
you basically run in the dark. You go up Cinnamon Pass Road for like 2.5 miles before you split off onto Alpine Gulch, and you're heavily treed and doing like a million water crossings within the first like 8 miles, and it stays very dark in there. So don't start it without a headlamp.
Okay, so what's the biggest mistake runners make in the first section of the race here? Because I do recall I saw you running a couple of like sub 7 minute miles on that road, getting out
Uh,
there really quick. Is that
I get
strategic?
excited.
Well, but is that strategic because then it turns to single track, or like what would you advise people to do for that first section?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's because I don't think there's like enough people to really make bottlenecking a huge issue. If there's not going to be like 15 people who try to run out really fast, but you definitely you would not want to start egregiously conservative for that reason because it would be pretty hard to pass people on the narrow trails. I think you would just go out as with the effort you would go out with any 50 miler, and you'll find yourself in a pack where it's reasonable and you'd be able to pass at some points. I do think it would be a fool's errand to run out way by yourself if you could help it. I think you should pack up because it's a pretty narrow, winding trail. It's still dark, and you have to cross the creek. You have to do this creek crossing, which, it's anywhere between like shin deep, and some years it's been over waist deep. And you think you cross it like 10 or 15 times. It seems like a million. It's well flagged, but it is dark. So it helps to have people who can spot flags and things. Yeah, that would be my biggest piece of advice, at least for the first, hour or so. Yeah, just to help you stay on course, basically.
And I remember, I think I ran a little bit of that section, and I was just thinking to myself, like, how do people run quickly through here? Because it's just super windy. Like you said, you're crossing the water, you're on little rocks and like grass, and
Hmm.
sometimes I don't know, like, but it's just not great footing, even though it's kind of feels maybe a little bit flat. It's just not fast, right?
Yeah, and I think at that point, I think the water crossings distract from the fact that you are climbing the whole time still. It's not
Mhm.
the steep part yet, but I don't know. I assume within the first few miles you climb at least a few hundred feet. It is all net uphill. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then you start to get into some of the crux of these climbs. So climbing into the high country, like tell us a little bit about kind of how you approach the early climbing.
Yeah, you look for flags. So so you're going up Alpine Gulch Trail and you're going across the creek a million times. Eventually, you leave the creek and it becomes a more steady climb. And then you pop out of it's not necessarily tree line, but you pop out of the forest, and then it's kind of big, open molehill grass kind of stuff. And some years there's a ton of down trees from avalanches, and they do a good job at clearing what they can, but you do need to pay pretty close attention to make sure that you're headed towards a flag because it's not necessarily a trail at that point. And then eventually you'll get to the top of this big grassy uphill, pretty steep section, and it turns to an actual trail where there's a bunch of switchbacks. There's always a few dudes posted up that I think they have water. It's not a real aid station, but they're kind of there to just cheer for people. And I have come through in the lead pack in the last few times that I've done it, and you kind of just wake them up and they kind of cheer for you. Uh, and then you kind of crest the top of this climb, I think just over 12,000 feet. And that is usually sunrise, and you're at 12,000 feet, and it is the most beautiful sunrise you could ever imagine. And then you traverse the backside of this ridge before you take a pretty steep descent, which you can absolutely fly down because it's not that technical at all the way down into Williams Creek, where you see your crew for the first time, which is also a great place to camp.
That's awesome.
Okay,
So
so then
just just
sorry, yeah.
just do a quick overview here. This is a big counterclockwise loop starting in Lake City. And the
Mhm.
aid that you mentioned was is actually called Alpine Gulch, is what they call it. Aid number 1, mile 7. It says pack in only. So you're like saying they pack in some water. I'm guessing you don't grab anything from them, and then you continue on. And obviously that first spot that you hit where you can see either your drop bag or your crew would be that Williams Creek after you've done kind of the first climb. I do love kind of the description overall that is out there of like there's 2 massive climbs, 2 like 4,000-ish foot climbs with a large ridgeway. Like you spend a lot of time at high elevation. Lake City's already at elevation. You spend a lot of time at high elevation. And then there's another couple 1,000-foot climb, towards the end. So do you view it that way, kind of with those 3 climbs in mind in terms of the whole race and kind of segmenting it up that way?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it should be said that Lake City's at like what, 83 or
9.
85 or something like that. Yeah. So the first climb ends up being about 4,000 feet. I think you go up to 12,500, something like that. So I think of it as 3 climbs. Because the last one, although it looks significantly smaller on the map, I think it's 2,000 feet. It's the hardest one for sure. Not just the fact that you're late in the race, but the terrain and the heat really get you by then. So I definite 3 climbs, and the littlest one is not the easiest.
Yeah, I got your Strava up. Mile 42, a 770-foot climb in that mile,
Oof,
and then another 500 feet in mile 43 before you're descending again. So,
don't remind me.
yeah, yeah.
And early on, you're doing like you're doing like a couple hundred, then 2 400 foots back to back, then a 600, then a couple 900-foot back to backs. And so it just is like this relentless, continuous, like a lot of, you don't get a lot of that continuous long. It reminds me of like a CCC or something like that, where it
Ugh.
just doesn't exist that many places in the US where you have like climbs that just go for 3,000 feet continuously, basically. So yeah, sounds like great prep for a lot of the UTMB races as well.
Yeah, true mountain race. It's awesome.
Cool. All right, so then we're back at that first aid, and then what usually happens at that first aid? Are you just quick like bottle refresh? Anything else? Do people swap packs? Like, how do you think about prepping for that next section?
Sure. I've done it a couple ways. I think so. I ran in this past year, 2025, and then the previous time I ran it to that was 2023. So in 2025, all I did was a little bottle change. I think I probably stashed one bottle and carried another one and then got fresh gels. Because early in the race, you probably start hydrated and it's always pretty cold with all the creek crossings. And then there's a bunch of dew on all the shrubs you're running by, basically. So it's pretty cold. So a pretty simple swap there this year. I have done it. And I know several people who basically you won't see your crew again until mile 40. And at that point, you've done the entire Carson climb, which is the biggest second climb. And you've spent 10 miles up on that bridge, which is probably around 13,000 feet the whole time. So a lot of people take a lot of time up there. And even if you don't, if you have high hydration needs, it would not be wrong to grab a pack at that point. And that's what I did in 2023. I think my crew, I just threw a fully loaded up pack on me at that point. Hit some sunscreen, that kind of stuff's probably a good idea at that point too. But you can make it really quick or semi quick and just prepare to not see anybody again for, you know, 5 to 10 hours, depending on your pace.
Now you do get a drop bag at mile 21, Carson. It's no crew access, but it sounds like you could have a drop bag there as well. So that's what, 6 miles from the Williams Creek aid station. And it sounds like
Mhm.
after quite a bit of climbing, it goes without saying that most people are going to spend more time on this course than you will. They say that the average is around 13 and I think the cutoff is 16 hours. So they're probably going to spend a lot of time on these sections. One thing that I'm curious about, you mentioned kind of the large number of water crossings right as you start the race. Like, do you hear about people maybe having foot issues on this kind of a course because they just really weren't prepared to be kind of have their feet ruined at the start and then maybe not take care of it all the way through? Or is that something that you think most people are pretty well attuned to?
That's a good question. I'm glad you asked it because totally forgot to mention that a lot of people do a shoe change at Williams Creek, the first crew aid spot. I think the first year I did it, I did a shoe change. You will come in there with wet shoes. This is kind of a hot take. I don't think you should change your shoes there because they will dry out. You will go across at least 2 or 3 more water crossings. And depending on the year, you could probably hop rocks across a couple of them. But there are other years where your shoes are guaranteed to get wet again. And I would think that's probably the majority of years. It just depends what your goals are. If you're trying to race for a win or to get your absolute fastest time, I wouldn't do a shoe change. It's not wrong to do a shoe change, especially if you don't like if you're like super prone to blisters or foot problems. Yeah, tons of people change their shoes there, but they'll almost certainly get wet at least 3 more times.
And so there's only 2 crude aid stations, right?
Yes, mile
There's only
16 and then mile 40 at Slumgullion.
Yeah. Yeah. So I remember, driving up, kind of was waiting to see an athlete I was coaching, and I drove up early to that 15-mile aid station, and you kind of have to drive in there, and it's almost like you kind of like pop out of the forest a little bit for a second there. And it
For
seemed
sure.
like, at least in the front of the pack, it was like a very, very fast, we're just like pretty much, what we've come to know in these fast ultras of just like drop the bottles, grab another one, go kind of situation in the front of the race. So,
Yeah,
and
ideally, you shouldn't have cooked yourself too much by then. You shouldn't need too much.
yeah,
Yeah,
but I
because it's
remember
the
people
coolest
coming
early
off.
section.
Yeah, yeah. I remember like the athlete I coach, I think finished in 13 to 14 hours. He, you know, people were certainly showing some of the like tiredness and wear from that first climb. Like they were like, oh my gosh, this is,
Mhm.
you know, we're in
Probably
this
the
race.
descent. Probably the descent. You descend like 4,000 feet pretty quick, and there's no breaks in it. You could really, if you had not trained downhills, you could really blow yourself up right there.
Yeah,
It's
for
the
sure.
fastest descent of the race, I will say, at
Okay.
least in terms of the terrain.
Okay. So talk a little bit about what the high alpine section is like underfoot, or like, are we talking single track and you're on the ridge? Is there some runnable smooth? I mean, you're running all of this, but like, would you classify it as pretty rocky, or like, how would you describe it?
Sure. So let's just start with between the first climb and the first descent. You're up at the high point after the Alpine Gulch climb. You start traversing the backside of whatever they call it, and you would descend into Williams Creek. So off most years, there's a good amount of snow up there, and you have to follow the flags. There was 2023. I was running with Tyler Fox at the time in the front, and there was so much snow that they actually put flags to go around these big snow drifts that I thought they thought would be unsafe. Like if someone started slipping, I don't know, can't imagine you'd be able to stop. So there are considerations like that. Last year, there was not very much snow up there, and it was either packed snow or single track, semi rocky. You could definitely run very runnable if you're comfortable on relatively technical stuff. And then as you start to descend into Williams Creek, very smooth single track, you could absolutely bomb it. And therefore, you could easily blow your quads up if you weren't ready for it. So that's the first part, almost all runnable, pending snow conditions. After the second climb is a big dirt road up through Carson, which is a ghost town. It was like a mining town, and there's a couple of old structures up there near where the aid station is. As you get near the top of it, it turns to single, double-ish track. And you join the Continental Divide. Once you're up there on the Continental Divide, it's like grass molehills, and it is hard to run fast on for that reason. It's kind of like ankle roll central. It's not horrible. It's just kind of frustrating if you're trying to move really fast and you're kind of tired. I don't know how else to describe it. I think everyone's been up in that high tundra where it's half
Mhm.
grass, half rocks. Um, and then it'll eventually, after several miles, turn into a more predictable double track. As you descend into Slumgullion, it's quite steep, and it's a very loose dirt road with the kind of big rocks that have probably been chewed up by sides and things like that. So a lot of kind of like baby head, rolly things on it. You can descend it very fast, but it gets really steep and it's quite loose at points. So that's kind of the terrain and the high points of the course. Mostly runnable, but some considerably technical sections, especially if you're trying to run fast.
All right, so let's stay between the two crude aid stations right now. So mile 16, Williams Creek, and mile 40, Slumgullion. You have Carson aid at mile 21, divide aid at mile 31. So you've got like a 6 mile section and then two 10 mile sections. Do you think of those kind of equally, since the 6 mile has the climb and then 10 and 10? Like, how do you break up like how much either time either one of those are going to take, or what you're going to consider between those kind of like stake points there?
Good question. So the Carson aid station at mile 21, I don't think you need to carry that much hydration or heavy things out of the Williams Creek when you see your crew. I think having a flask with some dry powder in it would be a good option, or at least a couple of them. That next stretch is pretty long, so I don't have the course map pulled up, but you climb a lot before you hit that Carson aid station. And the sad reality when you get there is that you've only gone halfway up the climb, and that's the easier part. So, yeah. So to talk to anyone who's done that, I know a lot of people, that's where people blow up. That's where people start to realize the kind of oh shit moment happens as you go through the Carson aid station. And you're still probably only at 11,000 feet when you're there. So I think stock up for a lot of fluids. I've never nailed the high part of that course. I was telling you before we went online, I still think I've left 15 to 20 minutes up there just because um, I kind of found out this year I've been in a chronically dehydrated state in ultras that I've hopefully now fixed. But anyways, it's quite a hard section. The altitude is considerable. I think you're above 13,000 feet for, sheesh, probably almost 10 miles. You're definitely over 12.5. And as you know, nobody feels good over 12,000 feet. So um, the high point of the race is at mile 25. It's like exactly the halfway point, and you hit 13,300 feet. And the course map makes it look like it's a steady downhill. It's really not. It feels like either flat. There's a couple downhills that are maybe a little bit of technical component, but there's enough punchy little uphill dirt climbs where being at 13,000 feet feels like an absolute mountain. And it just feels like all your momentum's gone. So I would prepare for that stretch between mile 21 and 31 to the divide aid station to take longer than you think and to be harder than you think. So I think being prepared to stay hydrated in that section is probably the key with the altitude there.
So how much water fluid wise, liters wise, have you taken in the past? And then what would you do kind of with your current knowledge of like how much fluid you really want? Are we talking like Cocodona, like take 4 liters of water? Are we talking like, what are you doing for that 10 miles?
No, I think my issue's been a sodium issue, so that's a little bit easier to
It's not a volume issue.
correct. Exactly. Sodium's pretty light compared to the water component. So I don't know. I'm trying to think what I did last year. I probably brought 2 bottles for that section because it's not that hot yet. It gets hot when you hit the divide aid station, at least for the time that I've been doing it. Just if it's sunny, that is, because it's not temperature hot, but it's 13,000 feet in the sun hot. I'd probably bring 2 bottles out of the Carson aid station.
So Ryan does 2 bottles. Everyone else needs to do 2 liters.
3.
4 bottles.
Oh, 3 or 4.
Maybe. So that's what I've discovered about myself is that I don't have a super high sweat rate, but I have a way higher sodium loss than I thought.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyways.
Yeah, that's the tricky. I just yes, tip for everyone out there. Get a sodium concentration test so that you know, because I was telling this to somebody the other day that like, Zoe Rome, we were just talking about her. She ran this race. I was running with her in Steamboat a couple years ago, prepping for Run Rabbit Run. She's like, I learned that I don't need a lot of fluid, but I need super high concentration of sodium. Like I need like 1,000 milligrams per 500 liters kind of, type of concentration. So yeah, try to figure that out about it because I feel like it becomes exponentially a bigger deal when you're at altitude.
Game changer. Absolute game changer too if you figure it out and you've been totally blowing it the whole time.
What
which
was
means you
the
have to go.
What was the first race where you feel like you nailed your sodium and like you feel like, wow, that was a major difference in how I feel?
I fixed it before Run Rabbit this year, but unfortunately, I didn't bring a jacket and got hypothermic, so that it was my limiter.
You weren't the only one, Ryan.
Just wait for the 2026 Redemption Tour when I bring jackets and take sodium.
The world's not going to know I hit it. No, we saw a little.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right.
Jackets plus salt. All right.
Jackets plus salt. That's the name of the
Uh-huh.
episode. Jackets and salt. Okay, so let's just finish out the race and then we're going to go into your own experience here. But yeah, talk about, have you ever used a pacer? I know a lot of people probably would, maybe that are in the back of the pack that are going to take a lot of time, could be a morale boost to have somebody with you. I've run that last 10-mile section. Like you said, it's tough. It's climby, you're still high, but talk a little bit from Slim Gully into the finish and what runners can expect in that section.
Well, and
Yeah, I think
before you do this, mile 40
Mhm.
is where you can actually pick up a pacer. That's the first time that you can. And it's not very common in a 50 miler, but an alpine one like this that kind of runs like 100K, I love this idea that ability. And a lot of people might be starting to do this in the dark at some point. So I'll let you continue, but that's kind of baselining it a little bit.
Yeah, let me relegate my dog to inside because she's decided to act like an absolute
Dog
buffoon right now.
relegation.
Yeah, he is okay.
Ryan's dog
We're
is as
good.
old as Ryan.
That white lab has run so many miles.
She's a beast. She also does not like the sound of the UPS truck that's on my street. She likes the UPS guy. She doesn't know it's the same. Okay, so yeah, at mile 40, you've just finished a really steep descent into the Slumgullion aid station. Slumgullion is named after, man, it's either a fault or it's some geological feature.
Yeah.
I don't know. Interesting fact. Lake San Cristobal in Lake City, I just assume all these lakes in Colorado are reservoirs. It is naturally formed by a Slumgullion slide that basically blocked off the river. And anyways, cool fact. Anyways, Slumgullion is the name of the descent and the aid station going into mile 40. You will have been at very high altitude for a very long time, and it's probably the first time you dip to anywhere close, like under 10,000 feet for at least a couple of hours. So I think a lot of people probably spend pretty considerable time there compared to other aid stations. It also gets very hot down there as you go into the last 10 miles. So you go into the Slumgullion aid station, you pick up a pacer or you don't. Pacer would be more for probably morale boost than navigation. Uh, the course is really well marked. You wouldn't really necessarily need it, although if you're doing it for your first time, might be useful to have somebody with a map up. There's a couple of spots where you like have to run along the road for 50 meters and turn off again, that kind of stuff. I don't feel strongly that you would need a pacer though for anything other than moral support. You go down a pretty steep gully into like what I think is some mine tailings, and there's like an actual part where you have to run up this really steep, loose climb out of like a riverbed, and there's a rope there, and you pull yourself up by this rope. Anyways, after that, you go into Vickers Ranch, which is a private dude ranch in Lake City. The family are they're the nicest people ever. They open up the ranch every year for the race. And they actually run the kind of semi aid station, non-crude aid station. It's a real aid station at mile 46 or something like that.
Vickers.
Yep, Vickers. It's the Vickers family, and it's the Vickers Ranch, and it's the Vickers section of the race, and it's the Vickers aid station. So that climb is 2,000 feet. I think it's like exactly 2,000 feet, but it's really steep. It's mostly exposed. The sun is roasting. Most of the times I've been that I've done it, the sun has been roasting. Definitely grab an ice bandana, pour water all over yourself at that mile 40 aid station because it will help big time. Yeah, it's steep and grassy. It's not real trails for the most part. It's well flagged. It's easy to follow, but it's the hardest climb for sure. Like you said, it was 700 something feet per mile, a couple of them in a row. And then you get to the top. The terrain, I should say, is also different than the rest of the race, just being lower altitude. more treed as you get to the top of that last climb. And then it's flat-ish single track once you get to the top. And yeah, the Vickers family offer everyone like shots and all kinds of things you shouldn't take during ultras, but it's probably fun. Uh,
Love it.
Last descent gets really steep in the last 3 miles or so, 3 to 4 miles. Quite technical. I thought I was being chased really closely this year, so I absolutely bombed it. And yeah, and then you're in town for a mile and a half or 2 miles, and uh, yeah, you run totally flat slash very slight uphill through town. Everyone's out on their porches because it's a small town and it's a big event, and it's kind of their main EMS fundraiser, and everyone's cheering, and it's awesome. And then you eventually end your way in town park.
Well, it's a great point that you make about the private farm, the Vickers family farm. I think, a lot of people think about some of these alpine routes and think like, soft rock, right? Like go out and do an entire hard rock course over 3 or 4 days. And you can actually do that because they are on basically trails or terrain that you can traverse. You can't pull up the Lake City 50 map or this San Juan Solstice map and go do it on your own all the way, right? Right. I mean, and a lot of races have this where they have agreements with landowners and different things for the event. So it's a great thing to point out for people that it's just because it's out there, it's on a map, and you can see it from previous races or whatever. It's not necessarily accessible all the time.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Corinne.
No, you're good. You finish.
Oh, I was going to say one of the reasons this is my favorite race is the community aspect. I mean, the town has like 400 people registered on the census, and who knows what percentage of them are there all the time, but it feels like at least 200 of them contribute towards the race. All of like the EMS people are all running aid stations. Every restaurant in town contributes to this voucher you get when you sign up, that you get like a free meal at one of the places. Everyone contributes to the next morning's like award ceremony, a big breakfast for everybody and their crew. It's like this huge community event that everyone buys into, so it's quite a special feeling, and it's a really it's kind of a grassroots feeling, even though it's a little bit bigger than some of these small races. It's kind of reflects the reason a lot of us got into trail running in the first place. So yeah, awesome event all around.
Really
Yeah.
cool. So you get like Lake City bucks that you can go use at
Mhm.
any of the individual proprietor places.
It's a huge list, and it's like 20 or 40 bucks. It's like not like $5 or anything, It's like everyone like gave up like a whole meal basically.
And there's some good, like, I remember going into, very saloon-esque, just like the ambiance and of the restaurants matches the vibe of the whole town and the mining, it feels very mining town, in
Hmm.
all those establishments too. So I went back and found the Slumgullion earth flow is a remnant of a landslide in the San Juans, and it's a slow-moving landslide that crawled down the valley 700 years ago, creating a 4-mile long, 2,000-foot wide mass. And it is just a few miles southeast of Lake City, and it covers 1,291 acres. It's a striking example of mass wasting, the movement of large masses of earth material. So that's the
See?
geological. I'm sure my dad knows that well. He's a geologist.
I certainly don't. I just know it caused the lake.
When I first looked up Slumgullion, it said it was some kind of special, like, dinner type kind of meat. It's also that probably, but I don't know, some stew or something. Very
Well,
cool.
one of the things that we didn't necessarily mention was that uh there's the people that do this race, there's a really good actual finisher rate for San Juan Solstice. I think it was 225 last year. So if they had the same number of entrants, that's a 75% finisher rate with a cutoff of 16 hours. Which for a high alpine race, like if you were to compare this to like a Black Canyon 100K or something like that that has a 19-hour cutoff. This is a harder race within a shorter amount of time. Obviously, you want to be able to bring people in safely at the right times and kind of be able to collect mountain runners before they get too far or too gone. But I mean, the type of person that does this race is obviously pretty experienced. You do have to have completed an ultra or a trail event to kind of sign up for it, or something to kind of almost prove your chops. It's not like a one that you would do maybe for your very first trail race. And it's something that I think it's really cool. People that maybe want to do hard rock sometime in their lifetime, like, they should probably do San Juan Solstice 50.
And you're subjected to mountain weather for sure. There's been a couple of times where I do it, and then a couple of friends from my local running club have also done it and finished several hours behind. And I will have been like, oh, that was great weather the whole time. And they're like, oh, we got literally whiteout conditions and lightning on the ridge. And they were just like, 1 or 2 hours back. So rapidly evolving winter or mountain climate for sure.
But they don't have like a required gear list, right?
No.
No mandatory. This is like take care of yourself, kind of hard rock, like whatever you want to do, but you better know that you could encounter some stuff. So be prepared.
This is America. You're free to make terrible choices if you want.
Okay, we cover. I don't even know where to go from there. Oh man. Okay, so a few questions about your own race experience, Ryan, as we pivot into this. We went through a lot of the ones that we already had, and they got speckled into the description of the race, which I love, talking about some of the climbs you think are the hardest, things like that. Here's a few just about so you've done the race 4 times, you've won it twice, you've continually gotten faster and faster. The first question is, what does a perfect race at San Juan Solstice look like for you?
Looks pretty close to what I did last year, except I would fix my hydration problems before I went into the race, and maybe run like 20 minutes faster on the high sections. So long story short, it's, a purposeful but controlled effort in a fast descent into the first crude aid station at Williams. It's a pretty good push up Carson climb, the second climb, which is the biggest and maybe the hardest looking apart from, weather and stuff. And then it's cooling, and having executed the hydration from, the several miles you spend above 13,000 feet, and then going into the last climb. And then, ideally, if you had taken care of yourself and run within yourself, you could really bomb that last climb. So intentional, controlled, but pedal on the gas the whole time for sure is doable if you were to nail it.
Are you going back?
Not this year, but I would maybe next year. It just depends what I end up wanting to sign up for and kind of where things fit in.
Well,
Okay.
I saw that there was the 100K that you have coming up. Shoot, I forget the name, out in California.
Oh, Big Alta?
Lake Sonoma.
Oh, Lake Sonoma.
Okay.
Get Poison Oak again.
So that one's coming up, and then Run Rabbit's coming up. Is anybody from your crew, are you going to be out there at the race this year, do you think, or no?
I'll be there. Yeah. I have a few friends going out. Yeah, we always have a little crew, and it's usually, I don't know what the date is this year. My birthday is the 23rd. So it's usually just a nice little early or late birthday celebration either way. So yeah, everyone goes and camps for a few days.
Cool. 2026 is Saturday, June 20th.
Okay. Yep.
Not
So
the same
early
weekend.
birthday.
Not the same weekend as Western this year.
I think Western States last year also was the weekend after San Juan Solstice, but it's been the same a few times.
Do you have a most memorable moment on the race course?
Nice.
Good question. I have 2. One of them is recency bias, and this year I had kind of died because of dehydration up on the high point, and kind of lost a lot of time after having a steady lead, a pretty solid lead. And I was going up the final climb, the 2,000 footer through Vickers Ranch. And right near the top, I looked back and saw Matt Vera chasing me, and basically had a big, oh shit moment. I just absolutely blew it. And I knew that it was more of a physiological / kind of hydration issue. And I was like, my downhill legs are still good. Absolutely bombed the last descent. And I remember this girl holding a sign for me, particularly at the Vickers aid station, and them like offering me a shot of vodka, which I said I would do this year if I had a solid lead. And I just was like, I can't stop. I'm being chased. And I felt like an idiot because in hindsight, Matt told me that he burned his last match to get anywhere close to me. And I had probably like a 10-minute lead on him at that point. I probably looked like such an asshole. Yeah, I should have like stopped and like hugged the little girl and probably like faked taking a shot or something. But I was like, I'm sorry, I can't, but I could for sure. The other memorable experience I have was 2021, the first year I ran it. It was right before I graduated from my residency. So I just wasn't as good back then for, life constraint purposes and experience. And I had COVID like 2 weeks before the race too. And it was my first time doing it. So I was like dry heaving up on the high point at the Divide aid station. And I'm just standing there like kind of shivering and stuff. And Courtney Dauwalter looks like amazing on her course record thing and comes by me and she's like super chill. And she was like, "You all right? I can't keep anything down." She's like, "Well, keep trying stuff." And then she like smiles and like runs away with like, I don't know, cookies or something.
Love
You're so nice, but not what I need right now. Anyways, that's my other memory, was getting passed by the goat as I'm dying and inexperienced.
Awesome. That's so
Yep.
good.
Okay, I'm looking back at those results. So Courtney Dauwalter finished third overall that year in 9 hours 11 minutes, and you
Mhm.
were about 20 minutes back that year. But wow, that's
That
pretty
was a
cool.
struggle year for sure, but yeah.
Well, now though you've run almost an hour faster than her time, which is pretty
Oh yeah.
interesting.
2021 were the early days for sure, but it's a funny memory.
Well,
Speaking of that kind of the early memories, how has what have you learned from like mountain racing and how has your approach to this race evolved a little bit over time?
Uh, I definitely race it more aggressively now than I would have back then. Just having the confidence of knowing that I can push to a certain level and that I won't actually blow up. It'll just feel hard. And then just things like fueling and hydration and I don't know, everything. The sport's come a long way, but I was also like a beginner back then, so my physical capabilities have come a long way too, especially since not being in like medical training anymore and actually being able to adapt to stuff now is a nice luxury.
Yeah, you're as you have mentioned to me in text, hashtag part-time doctor now. So you got a little more time
Hmm.
to train, which
Not to brag, but part time.
that's awesome. Is there anything that you wish that you knew before your first San Juan Solstice?
Uh, I think I wish I knew a little bit more of the hydration component. That would have probably changed my life for about 4 years. Especially in the longer stuff, you can kind of get away with it in the shorter stuff. And I also think the I think I would have pulsed in more altitude when available for sure. I think if you can get to, even if you can't afford the time to go camp at or sleep at altitude, really, if you could get above, 12,000 feet a few times on key long runs and do some like pushes up there and just get your body used to it, that'll do you a ton of good in a race like this, especially given that it's pretty early season and you probably haven't spent much time up super high yet. Just do whatever you can in prep for the race. Those would be the big things for this one for sure.
okay, so the average finish is around 13 hours. The sub 16-hour finish it says it's called the Survivor Award. And then they've got a couple other categories in there. You've obviously been sub 10 hours pretty much every time. It says it's the Mutant Award. Is that, and you said, that's the hat that you've got right there, right?
Oh yeah, the blue hat is under 10 hours and then I think under 12 is a red hat and then a finisher is like a white hat, I think is the pattern. Apparently under 8 is a green hat. That's what Jerry told me.
Yeah,
That's
you
the
should.
ultimate goal in my life.
So
I'll wear it
you've got
until the
some
day I die if I
competition
get
there.
one.
Yeah. So, a runner like me might be like, okay, can I get a sub 12-hour hat? Like that'd be a pretty cool thing.
It's a thing in my friend group. Like people are like my buddy Max wanted a blue hat so bad after running it twice and we talk about it all the time.
So he like doesn't wear it. Does he not wear his red hat? He gotta be prideful about his red hat.
I've seen the red hat come out a couple times, but probably not very much since he got his blue hat.
Okay, so he did get it. He did
Wow,
get it.
Yep, this last year he ran 9:20 or something like that. He ran a pretty good time.
nice.
Okay,
That's
so
awesome.
yeah, only 12 runners got under 10 hours last year. So Max Robinson is who you're talking about. Fruit of
Exactly.
Colorado's pride and joy, right?
Exactly.
There we go. Shout out to
Okay,
Max. 947.
Pretty good.
that's solid. Okay, so who do you think? Because the Courtney record was set a while ago, and I remember. I mean, there've been a few women who've gotten somewhat close to that. There was a famous. I
Mhm.
mean, this was one of Hannah Allgood's breakout races. She sprinted through town and passed Claire Gallagher in the final mile of this race. I think to
Yeah, I
win.
think Claire was less than like I think they were right next to each other when they came in. It was pretty crazy.
That's awesome. So are there any women that you would like to see run this that you think could maybe contend for a new record on the ladies' side?
Oh man, you're putting me on the spot. New record. Well, I think the obvious would be like Katie Scheid, right? Because she's proven herself quite good at altitude and she's honestly good at everything, it seems like. Man, I'm bad at being put on the spot like that. I'm sure
I
I
would
could come up with a list of 5 or 10 usually.
cool if we could get some international, like it's so hard because I don't know, for an international contingent to come over and do this like midsummer right around Western States. It's just kind of a hard time of year, but like people I could see someone like a Martina Valmasoy or Ruth Croft just like doing crazy things
For
on this.
Or you think even domestically, someone like Tara Dower that's done really well at altitude too, and is pretty good at just burying herself. You would never really rule someone like that out. Yeah, but I mean, what Courtney did was very fast, but she was also running by herself. So you see what happens if even if the conditions are slightly worse when Claire and Hannah did it, they came pretty close by pushing each other. So I think if you have someone breathing down your neck on that last descent, you can really fly.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. Okay. Do you want to do the rapid fire questions, Corinne?
Okay, let's rapid fire. To close it out, we're going to rapid fire. Ready?
Ready.
Favorite section of the course?
Carson climb, second one.
Hardest climb.
Second one, Carson climb.
The best post race food in Lake City.
The breakfast buffet, the afternoon, or sorry, the breakfast buffet for the award ceremony the next morning.
Oh,
Amazing.
okay. Okay. Which shoes do you wear? Yes, you're an Norda athlete.
I would wear the 005s because I like them for everything. I think last time I raced, I ran, I think the Adidas before I was sponsored by Norda. I think I ran in the Adidas ASUs.
ASUs. Ooh, that's risky a little bit.
Hmm. But they're fast. I'll take that risk every day.
Okay. Okay. Rain jacket or no rain jacket?
Pending weather conditions. I think there are some days where there's actually minimal to no risk of weather on the divide. I think last time I did it was one of those days. You can always have your crew have one for you at the Williams Creek aid station before you go up. Most years I would bring one, especially if you're going to be up there for a while.
Okay. Is there one piece of gear you never race without?
Probably a naked band.
Okay. We already
That was a
talked
cop.
about
I don't have a better one.
will we see you at San Juan Solstice again? We already asked that, just to reiterate.
Yes, but I will be there in crew/fan, number one fan capacity this year.
Okay. And do you think either of the course records are going down this year?
I don't think Dakota Jones is ever going down. There's a hot take. That's ridiculous. I don't know who's on the women's list, so I'm going to say no because it was Courtney. I think I would remember if someone like that signed up. No offense if there's anyone in the race that it's not impossible. I don't think Courtney's is as strong as Dakota Jones is. I can imagine Courtney's being broken. I literally can't fathom like 7.5 hours.
Okay, so that's a hot take. What's a better course record, Dakota Jones, San Juan Solstice, or Matt Carpenter, Pikes Peak Marathon?
Since I'm the number one San Juan Solstice fan, I'm going San Juan Solstice. It's freaky. If anyone runs that race and tells me they think they could have run 7.5 hours, I would call them a liar. It was during that period when he was like in his early 20s and winning everything. And I think it's in his race report where he told someone I know or something. It's apparently his like best performance ever. It just didn't get, he said it was his best performance ever. It just didn't get the attention because it wasn't at Western or something like that. It's nuts.
You heard it. Okay, you heard it here first. We're going to petition Debo to have a Hall of Fame entry of the Dakota's performance at San Juan Solstice put into the archives of ultra running history. Needs to get more love. So We'll see if we can't
Mhm.
get more words from Dakota on this. But thank you, Ryan, for doing all this, and congratulations on how much you've progressed in this race and running it so fast. Thanks for telling us all a little bit about it. And I guess needless to say, you would recommend everyone do it at some point, right?
Yep, best race ever.
So usually
Best
the
race.
signups are in like December, so you got to be on it for getting yourself on the
Yeah,
lottery list.
January 15th through 30th, it's open every year,
Yeah,
and you can sign up anytime in that period to get in the lottery.
Awesome.
cool. Thank you so much, Ryan.
Good
Yeah,
luck for
thanks,
the
guys.
rest of your season. Thank you for taking the time. And yeah, we will talk to you soon.
Anytime. See you guys.
Thanks.